We're on the cusp of finals week with everything to play for, and the close tussles and the big wins, they just keep on coming.
Wow.
It's out of here.
The roofer.
And the top guns are firing at the right time.
Oh, takes it on. Just picks it up and sends it 10 rows back.
Brad Hodge joins me in the co-host chair to dissect, and Thunder General Manager Trent Copeland is our special guest. This is The Surge. Hello everyone, welcome to another edition of The Surge. I'm Adam White. Our co-host for today is Brad Hodge. Now, Hodge's decided he'd come in after the Stars had won 4 in a row. You sort of thought it was time to come back in. They're flying, so here you are.
Thank God Whitey wasn't. It was a big prediction at the start of the year with the Stars lifting the trophy, but hey, still there. Who knows? Could happen.
Well, you've almost justified your decision with how well they've been playing recently. They're undefeated in 2025.
Wasn't looking that good in 2024, was it?
No.
It's funny. We actually analysed their performance. They didn't win a game in 2024,
No.
so they were happy for the turn of the year, start 2025, and it's been good to watch. Actually, I think they're playing some really good cricket, starting to gel nicely, and as we know, the Stars need to be performing well. They're a big team, playing at the MCG. They're well supported. And, good to see Glenn Maxwell on fire. He's played a couple of unbelievable knocks that we know he can do, and some good bowling performances as well.
And I think you're right in what you say, in the sense that I think the competition needs the Stars to be good, particularly in Melbourne. And if you think over the 2 derbies that they've had so far this year, in fact, the only 2 derbies there'll be, 80,000 have come to 2 different venues to watch the 2 sides play. So it shows when the Stars are up and about and Glenn Maxwell is up and about that the place can be pumping.
Yeah, it's big, isn't it? Ever since you go back through history and you think of, Shane Warne running the team, and you had Kevin Peterson and a lot of big names, a lot of big peacocks, running around in the green shirt, being the Melbourne Stars that they were. And I think it's important for, the Melbourne public. They love cricket. They love their Stars. They love their Renegades. And for the Stars in particular, that's got the big venue, the high-grade MCG, to be able to perform well and give back a little bit to the patrons that come and watch them all the time, because it is a big-ticket item, of course. And I guess broadcasting-wise, you want one of the big Melbourne sides doing well. So that is the Stars. So it's good to see. And as you know, when a team goes well, they're supported and people come and watch cricket, and that's a good thing for everyone.
Yeah, definitely. Now, talking about the derby, the Sydney derby is that is the big talking point now, because both the Stars and the Hurricanes are absolutely firing. Now, Trent Copeland will be our special guest on The Surge today. So he is the general manager of the Thunder, and he's changed a lot at the Thunder just in the short time he's been there, and clearly whatever he's done, he's working.
Yeah, I'll be in Sydney for that big showdown tomorrow, which will be really cool. It's going to determine a few things, isn't it, where the Sydney Thunder sort of finish in the context of the finals and the season. So that's important. Everyone wants to finish first and second, get an opportunity to qualify straight into the final. We put him on the TV the other day as he was walking past and called him in brackets the difference. So I can't wait to find out what difference he's made, I guess as a leader, things on the field. It's a high pressure job. There's no doubt about it. You ride the Lightning. There's a lot at stake. There's sponsorship. There's, as I mentioned, supporter base and performance on the field. And he'll probably tell us this, that you ride it because you can't have any influence, and, you're banking on your players doing the job. And so far the leadership's been great. I think Davey Warner's really relished under that opportunity to captain a side again. You can see there's a level of ambition and commitment on the field that you can see when you're off field.
You've worked with Trent for a while now with Channel 7, and you've played against him over the years, I'm sure, as well. Have you been surprised that he's been able to make this transition into sports administration? It feels like so seamlessly.
I'm surprised he's getting enough sleep to be able to operate in both formats pretty clearly. He's doing a good job. Look, one thing I will say is that I actually really support what Cricket New South Wales have done. Trent's obviously in there with a great knowledge of cricket and clearly a good administration brain, but also Rachel Haynes as well is also partnered with the Sixers. So you've got two really clever, invested people in cricket now operating close to, I'd argue, the most important thing in cricket. Like, with all due respect, the BBL teams, in my mind, financially and the way they attract people, are more important than the Sheffield Shield aspect, because this is where money's generated. This is where their fan base come from. So it's really important, and this is why I sort of was trying to pump up the Stars and the Renegades, because it's important for my home state, our home state, to be able to generate young kids coming through and families watching. So look, he's done a great job. It's you could argue that it's a changing of list or the captaincy of David Warner, or I'd like to see what his strategy is when he comes in here and talk about that. So they were definitely under the pump last year. There's no doubt about that. They were hopeless. So it's good that they've been able to turn it around and be competitive, that's for sure.
All right, so Trent Copeland will be our special guest shortly, but let's get into the power play, and we'll start with the Thunder's opponents in the smash, the Sixers. So even, just at the Adelaide Oval the other night, the way they're able to find a way to win, they just keep doing it. Doesn't matter who's playing. Helps when Steve Smith is playing, by the way, but they know how to find the line.
He's good, isn't he, Steve Smith? The one thing I love about when he comes back to play Big Bash is that it just amplifies to everyone in Australia how good our top players are. So, this is a domestic competition, and when you come back one level, and if your mind is in the right place, you can really show everyone how good you are. So,
does he surprise you at all with what he does, or
no? He doesn't. No, he's a super skilled, best in the world, talented individual. So it's not a surprise that he comes back. What he does have is he has an insatiable appetite to be the best. And I think that shows out everywhere. So it doesn't matter what tournament he's in or where he's playing. Every time I'm sure he goes to the ground, he wants to let everyone know that he's the best. And he continually shows that. So it's pretty good. The Sixers themselves, well, they have been the best as well, up there with the Perth Scorchers over a long period of time, successful team. And one thing that sticks in my mind, we interviewed Moses Enriquez up in Coffs Harbour when it was rained out. And the one thing that he talked about was he said that the shorter the game goes, if it gets reduced to a 5 or 7 game, 7-over game, then he thought that the Brisbane Heat would have more of an opportunity to win. And so he elaborated on that. And he said basically, like, the longer the version goes, the more decisions you have to make. The Sixers actually appear to make really intelligent decisions. So basically what he was saying is that his team know each other really well, they gel really well and know how they operate under pressure, and they seem to make better decisions under pressure. I think that's really important because it goes to show that, yes, that's why they're up the top, because they consistently make good decisions under pressure when others might crumble. So I thought that was a really good analysis of why their team's actually pretty good. And they got pretty good players as well. That helps for a start.
So we had Jordan Silk on the program the other day, and we talked about the leadership that they've got. So Jordan's the captain of Tasmania, Moses the captain of New South Wales, throw in Menenti as well, who's not playing, but he's also a leader in domestic cricket. So they've got quite a sort of a thick leadership base. But talk to us more about Moses, because I find him captivating to watch as a leader more so than as a player, the way that he gets that team playing the way they do. So he does it with the bat, he can do it with the ball, but I don't know, there's just something about him that it feels like he's in total control of the game when he's out there captaining the side.
Yeah, he's a thinker, isn't he? He's a forward thinker. So we always talk about, are your leaders, proactive or reactive? He's a proactive captain, so his mind's always sort of one step ahead of the opposition. He's got a really close relationship with Greg Shipperd. Greg Shipperd, as in Victoria, we used to call him the master, for good reason, that he's got a wealth of knowledge and been able to put a good side together. And I know for a fact that he works pretty closely with Moses and they run that ship and steer it the way they want to. And that's a really good partnership. That's important to have. Moses has got a wealth of experience. That's the other thing. So there's not a situation where he probably hasn't walked through. And for him, he's got a nice mixture of youth and also seniority as well, where he can call on the Ben Dorshus or Sean Abbott or James Vince. It's just these loads of people around him that he knows that, they're bankers. They'll get the job done. I think that's important as a captain to know because there's no second guessing. You just know that past history, they'll get it done. So what he does, like any good captain, is he installs belief that his players will get it done.
And you can tell how competitive he is and how determined he is.
He's a competitive beast, that's for sure.
The pretty ordinary LBW decision he got the other night, he was filthy, but he has this intensity about him that it's a calm intensity.
Yeah, I mean, there is. And I guess there's that you can always be calm when you know you've got artillery around you to get the job done. So, that's one of the things which in any cricket side, if you don't have the artillery, you can fight, you can scrap, you can do whatever you have to, but ultimately, most times you'll come up short.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So, they've got this beautiful list of talent. They've got sort of all bases covered. They've got a good batting lineup. They've got good all-rounders. They've got options in their spin variety. They've got good pace, change of pace. So there's this whole list that's been put together. And I guess we've always said, or everyone's sort of said, that if you can keep that core group of individuals together, then you're going to be good over a period of time because, as I said before, under pressure, everyone sort of knows how everyone reacts. That's the hardest thing for, I think, I'll say the Thunder and the Renegades, who don't have, most players want to play for, if you play for South Australia, you want to play for strikers, right? So, and you generally have a core group of locals that you know well. Queensland are the same, Perth are the same. There's probably 8 to 10 players in that first 11 that represent either their state. So they know each other very, very well. So that's where those two franchises, and they're not franchises, those two clubs, Thunder and Renegades, probably seem to have, I guess, a little disadvantage, so to speak. So there's two states. They've got to sort of separate those players into. It's difficult because then you got to learn. Like no one would have played with, Jake Fraser McGurk, for example, has probably never played with John Wells. So they've got to learn that. Yep. They're the little conundrums that those two teams sort of face and challenges, I reckon.
And you've lived it.
Yeah,
you've had both. You've had the Strikers experience. You've had the Renegades experience. Just whipping through the other power play items. So we've talked about the Sixers. We've sort of talked about the Thunder, which we'll talk to Trent Copeland about. Then there's the Hurricanes. Are they the three you think that the winner's coming from, or do you still feel that someone can come from below that top three?
Still believe the Stars can get it done.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm still confident that can happen. And I think Maxi just said it the other night on TV when he was getting chatted to. No one will want to play us right now, and he's probably right. Especially when
no one will want to play him.
Yeah, well, that's a good point, particularly him. So I think that's a real advantage. There's a few good things to like about that. There's Bo Webster coming back off there's a lot of belief and skill in that lineup as well. Marcus Stoinis has led well. So they still haven't played their best cricket. That's the scary thing about it as well. Whether they've got the bowling attack to match their batting lineup is still questionable. I think they're vulnerable there. I don't think it's a red-hot attack. Go to the Hurricanes. That is a red-hot attack. Like if you're an opposition batter and you're playing the Hurricanes tomorrow, you're going, oh dear, how am I going to get a run tomorrow? I've got Stanlake and Meredith at the top, and then I run into Ellis and Jordan, who are economically brilliant. Then I've got Chowdhury, who's a pretty handy leg spinner. Then I've got a few variations in that as well. So you sort of go, oh, this is going to be tough.
So on that, Stanlake now, one of the unluckiest cricketers there is out for the tournament after taking that catch.
It's so disappointing.
So it's disappointing for him, but from a Hurricanes point of view, do you think that he can be covered?
No, he can't. No. Unfortunately not.
So you think that brings him right back?
I do. Yeah, it does change he's taken a wicket pretty much in every game that he's played, Billy, and a couple of important ones as well. He's probably economically slightly higher than the rest of the unit, but that's probably on the back of getting flogged in Geelong when they had 70 on the board and he bowled a couple of overs and Tim Seifert whacked him around. So you just take that out of it. it changes the way Nathan Ellis has to operate his quicks. So then his role will change for Rolly Meredith and his own personal role as well. So we might even see some overs from Mitch Owen, which gives an opportunity to the opposition to go, well, he hasn't bowled so far this tournament, so let's get after him. Like they're the little things.
Domino effect.
Yeah, it does. Then you get a look at Tim David and things like this. It does have a big domino effect, and I think it will affect them greatly in terms of their chance to win the title. I think if Billy was there, they're probably equal favourites actually. So it's I'm devastated for Billy himself because you could see there was a lot of love in his game. There was some smile on his faces. This is the first sort of time I think he's really been successful in T20 cricket.
Yeah.
So, he's developed a couple good slow balls. He had the support of his captain and his coach. He's playing every game. And yeah, it's shattering. I'm sure he's shattered personally.
They've still got a couple of games to go, the Hurricanes, before the finals. So it'll be interesting to see what they, perhaps try before we get to the finals. Talking about the finals and a team that probably won't make it. We can't rule them out yet, are the Scorchers.
Yeah.
But this fall from grace, I didn't see it happening. I don't think too many people saw it happening. Have you been able to identify what's different this year with them?
Unexpected, isn't it? Well, probably a couple of things. They haven't batted particularly well, apart from Cooper Conley, who's been a standout. There hasn't really been a lot from the rest of the crew. Yep. We've seen Finn Allen play a couple of handy knocks now and then, but they've sort of missed that continuity, I think, all the way through. I've seen a few rush shots, like there hasn't, which we're not used to as well, and that like there's some brain fades, you could say. And yeah, I think they've been under pressure. Their bowling unit, I think AJ Ty going at the runs that he's gone has been a real surprise. Like he's been expensive, sent him out of the side. Matt Kelly comes in, there's an opportunity for him to win the game, but he got pumped. And then, so those little things I haven't seen before. And there's been little bits of panic. Which
what's their aura?
Definitely. And under Ashton Turner, you don't see that level of panic.
Yep.
This year I've seen it in the field, sort of. It's been a few people lost at sea, where to go. And you could see the panic about if they got hit for 4 or 6. The batting, they looked rattled when they lost back-to-back wickets. Usually you just think they're going to claw their way out of that somehow. This year it just hasn't happened for them for whatever reason, I'm not sure. It's only Adam Voges and the management team can put a handle on it, but it looked like, I wouldn't say, wasn't passion. Maybe just other sides were a fraction hungry to beat them more this year. Like to make the finals, you have to turn the Scorchers over, and being vulnerable at home, like that doesn't happen. If you come home, if you jump on that plane with 2 points away from Perth, then you've had a monster victory, and we saw it a couple of times this year
from winnable positions.
Yeah,
they lost. So yeah, it is very unusual when it comes to the Scorchers for all the reasons you've just mentioned. The Renegades. Now, this is a really interesting case for me. Are they just not good enough, or are they a victim of circumstances that they've got this team, this batter-heavy team that can't get into good batting conditions?
Yeah.
What is that, or is it a combination of both?
No, I think the team's fine. I think they've just had when you got a batter-heavy team, you want batter-friendly conditions because your whole job is to outbat the opposition. And speaking to a lot of the Renegades players and the coaching staff as well, it's been quite a frustration that every time you go to play a game of cricket, every condition is different. So then mentally, you've got to readjust the way you play, and that's been a challenge. So for them to actually be successful with this list, they probably need to be supported by CA and who else and get the conditions right at Marble. I'm not sledging the conditions, but when you got a batting unit and the ball seaming around for the first 3 games, it doesn't help you. It doesn't help your cause, does it? So They really need to make that a good batting wicket. And it can be, like we saw. It's a great six-hitting venue. I've seen one of the best knocks ever by Ben McDermott chasing down, I think, 214 at Marvel. So it's a great venue when conditions are right.
Well, you've batted there many times. So
it's either one or the other. It's like I remember facing Ashton Agar there once and thinking, I can't score a run here. I hope he bowls one down leg side that hits my pad and I can get a scurry a leg by. Because it was just sticking in the wicket. And I don't know whether this has got to do with having the roof open or closed. I'm not sure whether there's a little bit of moisture that stays under the surface. But as soon as there's moisture in the wicket, like it's actually quite hard on top, but you can feel the moisture just underneath. And that causes the ball to move around. Now, I actually like the ball moving around. I think it creates interesting aspects of the game. But when you're a batting unit and a batting heavy unit, that's not what you want. You want something like Adelaide where you walk out and you know that it's going to be a belter from ball one. And, unfortunately we've seen nothing from Jake Fraser-McGurk, who and a couple of those players as well. He's not on his own. But
no, he's not.
If you don't move your feet when the ball moves, you're cooked. You're vulnerable. So that's where if it's flat and you play that high, aggressive, expansive game, then it's great. So, for me, the analysis will be not the list or who you chose in the draft. It's just get the conditions right.
So how much, Hodgie, can it get in your head? You talked before about it can sometimes be a good batting pitch and then the next time it's not. That in a tournament where there's 10 games in a short period of time, that once something gets in your head as a batter, is it hard to get that? Because it feels like it's playing with their minds and opposition are kind of feeding off the vulnerability of this batting lineup when they turn up and play against them now.
Yeah, very much so. I mean, we've seen the artillery, right? We've seen Will Sutherland come and play an amazing knock over in the West and Josh Brown. We know what Jake's capable of. Jacob Bethel, we saw batting on a good wicket down there in Hobart. Gets 80, no problem. Tim Seifert we've seen smack him around. So there's a lot there. Does it play on your mind? It's a little bit... it does. It's sort of a little bit frustrating. So... you want conditions perfect. When you play cricket, you want conditions perfect, right? They never are. So it's just the level of how unperfect are they. So when you go at the bat, just say it's the MCG, you want the wicket to be flat, you want no movement, you want no clouds overhead, you want the side screens to be in exactly the right position.
The batters, of course, not the bowlers.
And you go, this is as good as it can get. And then everywhere from that moment, you work backwards. Oh, there's a few clouds in the sky. Might swing a little bit. There's a little bit of grass on the wicket, so we might see some movement early. There's big outfield, so I'm going to have to hit the ball hard today. There's a lot of running. So you just sort of work backwards from that. And when you don't get those perfect conditions, like if you walk out the bat and there's moisture in the wicket and it's seaming, and then you go, well, I'll play a good shot and the ball doesn't go anywhere. Like you think, geez, I'm up against it today.
Yeah.
And is that going to happen the next day? And when you show up the next day, you think, man, if I go to Perth and hit a cover drive and it goes for 4, today I hit a cover drive and it goes nowhere. Like that's frustrating.
Yeah.
It's not great.
Yeah.
So mentally it's a challenge, that's for sure. And then you go, it's almost like you're playing 10 games away from home because you haven't got this cauldron that you know the conditions are exactly the same.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's something they'll have to look at. I still think they need to bolster their couple of areas a little bit, but I think the list was good.
Yeah. All right, that is the power play on the Surge. We're going to take a break, and after the break, Trent Copeland, the general manager of the Sydney Thunder. And welcome back to The Surge with Adam White and Brad Hodge. It's time for our special guest. He's the general manager of the Sydney Thunder. His name is Trent Copeland. Trent, welcome to The Surge.
Oh, it's a pleasure to be on. You guys have been making waves all summer, so I am honoured. Thank you for having me.
Well, absolutely. We are a phenomenon. There's no doubt about that. Now, before we start, I'm just going to make sure that your car's safe in the car park, that there's no dramas before we start the interview.
I was two cars away from the Konstas effect having an impact on my car. But yeah, seriously, it knows no bounds, this Sam Konstas thing that is just flying from all angles.
Well, we may as well start there. I wasn't going to, but just talk to us about what's happened to young Sam in such a short period of time. He had that great game in Canberra that sort of set his season alight, having done well for the Sheffield Shield, but a totally different version of Sam Konstas. And from there, it hasn't stopped. So talk to us about the Sam you know, and even him coming back and playing since getting that test or that taste of Test cricket.
Yeah, it really has been a wild 3-4 weeks for not only Sam, but I'm sure his family, everyone around him. And I think you would both know, and Whitey in particular, having commentated directly on Sheffield Shield matches in the past, this is a kid who just lives and breathes cricket, loves batting, loves scoring hundreds. That's where it all starts. That's what we all know about him from grade cricket, underage cricket, and it's alarmingly similar to Phil Hughes. That hunger for batting, the hunger for scoring runs, and the really, I don't care who's down the other end bowling that cricket ball, I'm going to score 100 today attitude. But it is a game that is, I think, going to shock people how good his foundation is. Everyone sees the reverse ramps and the record-breaking 50 on debut for the Thunder. But underneath all of that is actually a really good forward defence, a really solid foundation, and a hunger and a temperament for scoring big runs. So I think people might want to make their own judgments right now on what they see, maybe a couple of interviews here and there, or revving up the Boxing Day crowd. But what I know and what we're going to see in the future is a hell of a kid that just really loves his cricket, and he's going to be around for a long time to come.
What's he like as a young man, and how has he coped with this explosion of interest in him as not just as a cricketer, but as a person, as it happens when you make such a statement on Boxing Day?
Yeah, well, I mean, Hodge, you would have experienced it as well, running out in front of a Melbourne crowd. Probably no one since Hodge, other than Scott Boland, has had similar sort of fandom during that test match. And with 280,000 plus people against India, and the way it actually transpired, that first morning of the Boxing Day test, for him to be out there reverse ramping Bumrah and things like that, I'm not sure I've seen anything like it. So he's been riding the wave. I'm sure he's had learnings where he's like, after the fact, just enjoying it, being a kid who's 19 on that wave and thinking, oh, I might do that differently, or I might maybe talk differently, or not rev up the crowd while I'm on the field as much, things like that. But, I mean, he's just a kid that is literally living out his dream in front of our eyes and learning on the go. So for him to have come through a series victory amongst 280,000 people at the MCG and a historic finish there, Sydney Test match, which was a green monster, and they get through a series win, back into the BBL, and now he's off to Sri Lanka. I mean, what a time to be alive for a 19-year-old.
Well, good news, Trent, is he actually lasted a lot longer than I did at the Boxing Day test, which is positive for Australia. Good experiences all around. You mentioned his appetite for scoring hundreds. I want to just, how does that roll off to you other players in the Sydney Thunder, but also those that represent New South Wales as well? And there's probably Gilkes, Davies, all these sort of younger guys. Has it had a small effect yet, and will it have a longer effect down the track?
Yeah, well, I'm sure you guys are going to want to talk about David Warner as well today, about the leadership aspect and what he brings to the table. Well, I've got to say, Sam Konstas is having a very similar effect. It's a fearlessness. It's a get in the contest. Had you asked me 18 months ago, Hodgie, how's this kid shaping up to play white ball cricket, I would have said that's his largest work on. The aggressive game and the belief in his attacking shots, when to play what, all of that was a huge work on. So for him to be here, like right here and now, and to be able to dominate bowling attacks in the BBL, to have done what he's done in Test cricket, like, it's absolutely wild to me that he is here already. And I think everyone around him in that Thunder environment in particular sees this air of confidence that, if I'm a kid that's in the squad, say a Gilkes or a Davies or anyone else, Tanveer Sangha, when you walk out to compete in state cricket, in BBL or in international cricket, the only thing stopping you is your own belief. If you doubt yourself, then you'll never do it. You're not here to participate, you're there to dominate. That's kind of the stuff that we roll out and talk about.
What do you like about what you've seen from Sam?
I'll tell you a little story. So I got invited in by Andrew McDonald the day before Christmas to their main training session, and I end up throwing balls to Sam Konstas after his initial net session. So you go in there and face the bowlers and then come in and get some sidearm from myself. Anyway, he played and missed at a few balls and was working on his technique, and then all of a sudden he just played this ramp and missed the first one. Then next one played it and hit it. Anyway, he walked up after the first one that he missed, and he goes, probably might have to wait till I get to 150 before I play that. And the first thing that came into my mind is, hey, this kid actually believes that he's going to get 150 in a couple of days' time. They're like, that's amazing. Most people just want to get off the mark, get a handful of runs and sort of work on that. And then, I'd seen him play the ramp a number of times, on that, on the videos and stuff in the president's, prime minister's 11 and so forth. And then I sort of said to him, well, we've seen you play. You have a lot of confidence in playing? And he goes, yeah. And I sort of said to him, well, why would you wait till you get to 150 if that's one of your go-tos and you feel confident? And he goes, hey, I'm pretty confident in playing it, so let's keep practicing. Anyway, he practiced away and nailed all of them. And I was surprised to see it so early. But it was just a really strong air of confidence and belief in his natural ability that, he could get the job done. There was no talk of Bumrah or any of their attack. It's just, I'm going to go about my business the way I want to, and I'm pretty confident that it's going to be successful. It was a pretty cool moment, actually.
Yeah, great insight. Trent, we do want to talk about David Warner and a couple of other players, but I want to go all the way back to when you first took over at the Thunder and some of the things that you put in place, some foundation markers, I guess, to try and change the course of this club.
Yeah, well, there's a lot that's happened since then, Whitey, but I think, and make no mistake, it's not me that's done this. It's been a collective effort, but a few of the things that stood out to me.
Whitey, he's now known, AKA the difference. So we just got to set the record straight. He's the difference. That's it. He's the difference.
Geez, there's been some pile-on in the last little while, Hodgie. The Steadicam following me around the other night at NG Stadium. I'm sure you were up to that.
No, it's good. Anyway, hey, take the credit if it comes your way, mate. It's good. Sorry,
no, I will. No, thanks, mate. I think, Whitey, I've said this to you before, but the things that were obvious to me were, I thought, a lack of team balance in the list and how they went about playing their cricket. And certainly then when I came into the four walls and started immersing myself, listening, asking questions, there was a undertone of, I guess, the Sixers on one side in the East and the winning titles, and us as a competitive community club. And yes, we are a competitive and community-based club with such a rusted-on set of fans, heart of multicultural Western Sydney, that is so great. But the ambition that I believe is always best is we talk titles. We are here to win. And if we don't win, then we go into looking into why. So the things that I could help control and influence was depth charting, analytics. I'm an American sports nut, like going into the depths of draft prep, list management, where there was no possible time this summer that Trevor Bayliss, David Warner could look at the team that they've got available to them in the 18 and not walk out onto the field prepared for every matchup possible. So that's kind of the stuff that I could help control. And then when we go into overseas list management processes, everything that I set out to achieve is on our best day, no one can beat us. I don't care who's playing against us. I want to set up the Thunder so that our upside is as good as anyone. And on our best day, we're going to win the tournament. So those are the sort of things that, and speaking to it in press conferences, speaking to it when asked in podcasts like this, speaking to it when we talk as a team. And that's where I love the impact that David Warner's been having. And it's not just the bucket load of runs that he's scoring, but he carries that aura and that mantra with him just naturally. He doesn't need to say it. We have an ambition that we are here to win. We are here to compete. And we do not let go of a contest until it is done. So people like Chris Green, Jason Sanger and other leaders in the past at this club, Huss, one of the greats, have done such a fantastic job in leading this club. The fusion of all of that together this year and Davey leading the charge has been a nice sort of marriage between all of our sort of ideations and our mantras. And I'm rest assured, we've got a long way to go and it's not a finished product, but great to see some early signs that competitiveness and winning and certainly dominating our home patch at NG Stadium, we're a long way towards doing that. Bar a little butchering of the last sort of 5 overs against the Sixers in the first game.
There's so much to unpack from just what you've said for both of you, but just to sort of expand that on David Warner's role, we know Davey Warner is one of the greatest players of of modern times, particularly in short form cricket. But that competitiveness, the leadership, stuff that we haven't seen a lot of for a variety of different reasons, we're now seeing every time we see the Thunder on the TV, or if we go and watch them play, it comes through the television screen, the intensity and the competitiveness and the passion. It feels like he's loving it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and Hodge, you'll know this. You've played a lot of international cricket, T20 tournaments all around the world. You've got to find hunger somehow to get your absolute best, to get 105% out of yourself, 110% out of yourself. He would still be an unbelievable player at this level. But competitiveness via captaincy and leaning into bringing players like Tanveer Sangha, Hugh Wybgen, who's come in from Queensland without being part of the squad list, but taking him under his wing and teaching him what batting's all about. But the real gold that I see, and no doubt you guys see it too, Hodge, you were commentating on the game the other night, Davey takes that catch at mid-off whilst on the mic. He turns around. He celebrates not just with his teammates, but with the crowd at NG Stadium, brings the fans into the journey with him. It's lifted up by a greenie with a passion on his face that you just can't fake. They're in the dugout in Perth when the awful clash between Daniel Sams and Cameron Bancroft happens. He brings the group together. He speaks about, let's do it for them. Let's do it for the fans that are with us on the journey. And you know what? It's bloody hard to win against the Scorchers in Perth at the best of times. Imagine if we did it now. And then when they hit the winning runs, Sherfane knocks it down past fine leg. Dave Warner's in the dugout, jumping all over his mates like he's a 9-year-old playing his first game of cricket. Like, that stuff is the gold that you get out of Dave Warner when he's leaning in as a leader.
Yeah, it's interesting. So can I ask you, Hodgie, when Trent was talking before about not being scared to win titles, to have a winner's attitude, a winner's culture, you were part of that for a long time with Victoria. Now, you were talking about this before. You got to have a good team to start that whole, I guess, process going. But does it resonate with you listening to Trent about that winner's mentality and not being afraid to win?
I love that. I'm glad I heard it straight out of his mouth, because I'm a big believer that there's winners and there's losers, and there's sort of no in between. So particularly in sport, right? With all due respect, Trent's judged by whether they win or lose, and most players are. Now, the tough challenges that we have in modern T20 cricket is that a lot of players play for 5, 6, 10 different teams across the journey of a year.
Yeah.
And sometimes you got to question what that connection is. So I think what I'm loving about what Trent's saying is that there's a real connection. They've found a common ground, a connection piece, which says that, hey, this team is your team. This is the Sydney Thunder, and you guys own it, and we're here for victory. We're not here to line your pockets with cash. We're not here to entertain. We're here to win. We're judged on victory. And I think that's really important and really great to hear. So I think that's something that you hear a lot about environment in T20 cricket. Well, sometimes you've got to separate environment and go, you know what, we're here for victory. So, and how you come about to get to that victory, you got to have a great environment. You got to have good leaders, but ultimately you've got to have 11 players that walk on that field that are desperate to win for your team. So I love what I'm hearing that from Trent there.
So has Davey exceeded expectations, or what we've all seen is what you were thinking we get?
I would say exceeded in the sense that you never really know, what you're going to get out of any player that you walk into a tournament with. So the ambitions for all of us was that we'd get the best version of Davey. The first time we've ever had a full tournament in the BBL of David Warner. So what would we see? How many runs would he score was my first priority. Like, I love you to score a truckload of runs and win us the tournament with your bat, first and foremost. But outside of that, the other stuff, we have millions of WhatsApp groups these days, whether it's operationally, staff, list management, all those things. Dave Warner is the most active on all of those. And sometimes it's taken the mickey, but a lot of the times
it can be a good and bad thing, that Trent, actually.
Yeah, it can be a bad thing, Hodgie, but luckily he's got people who will bring him into line.
One thing I will say, and you can comment on this as well, Dave's cricket brain, his acumen is spot on. So when he's out in the middle, making the right changes, the field placements, that's critical to win games of T20 cricket. And I think that he's done that brilliantly, and he's probably always had that. There's certain captains that just have that forward thinking and are able to read the game and forecast exactly what scenario might come about. He's pretty good at that.
Yeah, absolutely, Hodgie. And I've got to say, there's a vulnerability to it as well. It's not just, I know I'm going to do it. He's very open to asking for help, asking to Chris Green, Sam Billings, other players, Lockie Ferguson when he was here, who knows his game intricately and feels what a batter might be about to do. He is so open to Bilbo moving cover 5 metres to his left just because he's got a better angle and knows the nuances of the surface and the game. That's a vulnerability of, yes, he knows what you're talking about, Hodgie, and can read the game well, but he also doesn't have the ego in the game and in the contest just to see it his way. So I think there's a nice hybrid approach there between, yeah, let's all go with what I believe in, but also bringing the group on the journey.
Can I talk about, you've had some unfortunate incidents, as we know, with the list this year with Sams and Bancroft out. Good news is that Tanveer Sangar's back in. I'm still questioning how big a loss Daniel Sams will be. I think he's nearly your most important player. You think you can go all the way with him being ruled out of the tournament? Because I'm sure you're just so desperate to have him back, but medically he's just not right.
Yeah, and the first and foremost consideration is health, and both of them having come through the concussion in particular, brain injuries are no joke. And thankfully, both of them are past concussion tests and are now dealing with physical injuries in terms of soft tissue, bone type injuries, as opposed to that real significant concern of the brain and the longer term effects. So that's the first bit of good news. And I agree with you, mate. It's when you're looking at team balance and replacement players, all-rounders do not grow on trees, especially not such explosive ones like Daniel Sams. That game in Canberra against the Strikers to start the tournament, single-handedly won that game for us. Did some great stuff with the ball and in the field, but the over against Lloyd Pope, there's not many blokes out there that can do that. So it's really difficult to replace it. That's kind of why in replacing Lockie Ferguson and Sherfane, when they left, sort of coincided with that incident, and George Garton coming in, at least in principle, the similar style of bowler / lower order hitter. But yeah, like Lockie Ferguson, you can't replace a guy of that quality. You just got to do your best, go at X factor, and see how you come out the other side.
It would have been very easy when that incident took place, and then, as you said, you lose Lockie Ferguson, you lose Rutherford. That it could have all just fallen over, and it's like, we had a great start to the year, but we had a really bad luck with two of our most important players. But we've positives to come out of the year, but you haven't. You've pivoted and you've come again. That must give you great satisfaction.
Yeah, it really does. And I want to extend it even to before the season, we had Nick Maddinson broken finger. Will Salzman goes down and does his ankle. And we've had, I think, 9 replacement players, 2 overseas replacement players so far. One of those stories is Tom Andrews.
Yeah.
This guy, when I called him, was at the end of the Premier Cricket season, about to head into a Christmas break, in a financial planner's office, needing to ask his boss for 3 weeks off so that he could come and join the Thunder. And he's almost been our most important player. In terms of, you mentioned before, Hodgie, Tanveer Sangha was out for what's ended up being half the tournament. He is crucial to our success, particularly at our own ground. Tommy's not only come in and taken wickets at our ground, but also been going for no more than 25, 26 at places like Hobart, Optus and Brisbane at the Gabba. So, just an amazing story. And those are the little bits like the Josh Brown story from last year that make the Big Bash so special.
Yeah, it's a good point. Now, Sam Billings, he's fast becoming one of my most favourite players just with his energy. We talk about Dave Warner's energy, but Sam Billings almost matches it. And again, the significance over saying, I'm going to come for 3 years and I'm going to play the entire tournament. You are as in the Thunder, are my full commitment for the entire season. Again, I think that's, if you're trying to build a new culture under new leadership, that kind of thing helps.
Yeah, and I mean, Hodgie, you were just talking about it before as well, that the winning mindset, you could argue that Alex Hales is one of the greatest players that's ever played in the Big Bash for the Thunder, and you'd have a very good argument. When I looked at our list and I looked at the holes, particularly in leadership and the surge execution, but also that, someone that really speaks to, I loved my time playing Premier Cricket in Penrith. It gave me my start. Western Sydney means something to me. I'm going to commit for the full 3 years, start to finish in the tournament, but also has all of that bundled into one. That's the sort of stuff that is absolute gold. So Halesy's a ripper, great player. We have other younger, Sam Konstas and domestic players that I thought could fill that void. Sam Billings, people might argue not the biggest name in the world, like not the most amazing, like you'd pay top dollar for them all the time. You package all of that together to go with the rest of our squad. There was no one else we wanted to get.
So as a general manager then, Trent, how do you wrestle with that conundrum where overseas players in particular pack up and leave halfway through the tournament? How do you manage that as well? It's just extremely tough and challenging for everyone, but you in particular.
Yeah, it is tough. And there's some battles, we've been doing lots of sort of learnings and courses about circle of influence and circle of control. And there's a lot of things that I just can't control. So having a really intricate understanding of availability is the first part. So, and I'm talking broadly, not specific players. I'm talking, when are the English white ball team playing a series? When is the test team playing a series? Who's going to be available? Give me a list of players, then go into my data set and what skill set I'm looking for. That's where I sort of try and live first. And then when we get into discussions with players, I really want people who are just on the journey with us. So Lockie Ferguson this year was via draft, but very, very specific in terms of what we really wanted in our team. And I want to go on a journey with Lockie. I'd love to be able to bring him back to the table for the Thunder next year. We've got retention picks, things like that. That stuff is how we build for the future, but also an affinity with our fans. I think the fans love, A, players who are successful and help us win, but B, people like Lockie that come out and lean into the broader club. So, mate, there's no perfect answer, Hodgie.
No,
and there's
you just touched on the draft. What do you reckon? I'm just going to get your opinion on this about whether you scrap the draft completely and go to a complete auction-based theory like they do in the IPL. And the only reason I say that is that you get absolute genuine market price for your players. As a GM and someone who loves the BBL and cricket itself, what's your thoughts there?
Yeah, tough question, mate. I don't really know that there is a perfect answer without completely revamping everything. The timing of the draft is maybe something to look at, because largely we take a swing at that point and we trust that players will A, be healthy, but B, be still available and intent on coming to the BBL so far in advance of anything happening in other tournaments, World Cups, other things. So, yeah, that's maybe something I would toy with. But, mate, I'm an American sports fan. I want to go all in. Yeah. I want us to be able to – I mean, we did a trade for Wes Agar within 2 weeks of me starting in this role, and it was one of the first trades that have been happening with picks involved in the history of the league. Like, that's where I think we can lean in and go all in on, okay, we have assets that are no longer in our desired approach for next year. Let's get that on the table, have discussions proactively about attaching draft picks to depreciated assets, how you can move up and down the draft board. That's talkability. That's interest on the league, regardless of whether it's cricket or other sports. So I don't think any sport in this country does it all that well so far. So work to be done, but the intent is there. You add in player availability and it's bloody complex.
One final one, the Sydney Smash. It could be the biggest Sydney Smash there's ever been at the SCG, with two teams near the top of the ladder, both from Sydney. Steve Smith playing in magenta, David Warner playing in the green of Sydney Thunder. Packed house. I don't think it can get much bigger.
No, you're absolutely right. And two teams that are at the top three on the table. And if we beat the Sixers, we go potentially in front of them and could end up finishing first on the table, things going to plan. So massive game for us, massive game in terms of, Sam Konstas' last game for the club before he goes to Sri Lanka, Steve Smith's last game for the Sixers as well. So, amongst others, it is massive. And then you throw in the likes of Moses Enriquez saying it's an easy 2 points when we come up against the Thunder. We're coming for you. We're coming for you, Moe.
And then a very final question, promise. Is Sam Konstas a bigger name now than Dave Warner when it comes to the Sydney Thunder? Is it getting close?
No, he's absolutely not a bigger name. But I tell you what, he's tapping into new markets. Even being a Greek Australian that's so relatable, he's out taking selfies, photos. It's just a new style of that next generation of cricketer that I've got no doubt it'll become as big as David Warner. And those bigger names in Australian sport. So I'm with him on that journey. It's going to be bloody fun.
You know what it is, Whitey, which is awesome. I was in the nets with my daughter just the other day, and the kids next to me were practicing the Sam Konstas. So, the new lap or the ramp down to third has now got an attachment and name. That's pretty cool. When you're in that space as a player, people love you. It's good to see.
I've got to change my parenting. If my kids do any of that sort of stuff, I go inside and refuse to bowl to them.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, come on, mate. Get up with it.
I might have to change. Trent, thanks so much for joining us. Fascinating insights. I love your passion. I love what's happening at the Sydney Thunder, and a lot of it is due to your involvement. Good luck for the rest of the tournament, not just on Friday night, but hopefully through the final series as well.
Thanks very much, guys. Cheers.
Trent Copeland, the general manager of the Sydney Thunder. We've come to the end of our show as well, Hodgie. So I've got to wish you all the best with your Stars because there's still a pulse.
There's a pulse, that's for sure. I want to ask you quickly before we go. You said that Sam Billings is becoming close to your most lovable player. Who's the most lovable? Who's number one?
Oh, that's a tough one. I've always loved Laurie Evans.
Evans.
I do like Laurie Evans and how he goes about it.
Any chance you can love an Australian?
It's a good point. What I love are the players that show real passion for their team. And I think as we try and sort of search for real validation and a legitimacy around the league and that it means a lot to the players, that it's not just hit and giggle, we need more of the Sam Billings that have that real intensity and passions. That's what I like about him.
Couldn't agree more.
And he's great on the mic as well.
Oh, he's a beauty, that's for sure. And he fits right into that team with David Warner. They're two very aggressive bulls on the field which just want to win. It's good to see.
I'll give you a top three next episode of my favourite players.
Come on.
I need some time to think about it. Thanks for that. Really appreciate you coming in. And don't forget that if you haven't already, which I'd be very surprised if you don't, you've got to download the Big Bash app ahead of the final series, the best way to stay up to date with everything that is BBL. And thanks for joining us on The Surge as we get to the business end, not far away from finals. All teams still at this stage possibly are going to be playing in finals. What a great finish to the home and away season. We'll catch you next time.